So what is strength?
Strength is all about moving through resistance. So in this capacity, it's all about becoming a stronger person and putting the work into doing that and knowing that you do have some control over that process, which I think is just, there's so many analogies when it comes to a sport, like lifting something heavy for one time. And that just, spills into personal life. So that would be my definition.
It's the ability to exert force. On the other side of it, when it comes to the mind and spirit, it's ability to absorb force.
My name is Heintz, and I'm a competitive powerlifter in the Saskatchewan Powerlifting Association, as well competing in the Canadian Powerlifting Union. I started powerlifting in 2013, recently reaching a 10-year mark here this last December. I'm a North American powerlifting champion, Commonwealth Powerlifting Federation champion, a multiple provincial record holder, and national record holder as well.
Originally, I come from the hockey and wrestling world. Strength and conditioning has always been a part of course, my training as well as coaching. I'm certified powerlifting coach and I have my personal training certifications, but they consider me more of a builder at this point.
My name is Johnston. I'm a powerlifting coach. Right now, I'm also in physiotherapy school. I have a background and a degree in exercise sciences from the University of Saskatchewan. I'm a certified strength conditioning specialist through the NSCA and a certified personal trainer as well. I've been powerlifting since 2018 when I first joined Varsity Barbell. Some of my biggest accomplishments are gold medal at the 2019 North American Championships and a provincial record.
I'm Taylor Becker. I'm a 93 kilogram open division lifter. Nationally, I'm a pretty small fry. Provincially, I'm, top 3, top 5. I just love to compete and love the sport.
So my name is Kelsey Gudmundson. I have been powerlifting for not quite a year yet, so I'm still quite fresh into my powerlifting journey. But I do lift with Bridge City Barbell, and I compete with the Saskatchewan Powerlifting Association in the Canadian Powerlifting Union.
My name is Dr. Marc Morris. I have a PhD in human nutrition. I've been a competitive powerlifter for nearly 20 years now, something I started out of high school. I realized people lift weights competitively, and I was just completely enthralled with the process. After that, I've done many local meets, national meets, and even working up to the international level where I've competed and coached in both places. And it's been really, really exciting to have a career in something that I'm very passionate about.
The sport of powerlifting involves 3 movements: the squat, the bench press, and the deadlift. You get 3 attempts at each movement throughout a given competition day. So you get 3 squat attempts, 3 bench press attempts, and 3 deadlift attempts. On each of those lifts, you take your best lift or your heaviest lift, and that creates your total, which typically will determine your placing in the competition.
That is what powerlifting is. It's finding out how strong you are.
Typically training into a powerlifting competition further out from the meet, I like to program a higher volume, so more reps, more sets, just to kind of get you conditioned and getting ready for the higher workload as we progress to the meet. And as we go closer and closer to the meet, the intensity or the weight on the bar you're actually going to be lifting is going to be increasing over time to the point where weeks out from the meet, we're hitting near maximum lifts to get you exposed and ready for the lifts you're going to be hitting in competition.
So my training leading into Westerns at this point is basically consisting of 4 lifting days a week. I am bench pressing 4 times a week, squatting 3 times a week, and deadlifting twice a week.
We're hitting a lot of 5s and 3s. In the next few weeks, it'll be getting down to singles and doubles and basically getting weight as heavy as it can be in time for the meet.
So a typical day of training,
A lot of caffeine,
mostly looks like
a lot of caffeine,
the back squat, the bench press, the deadlift, competition movements, or
a lot of caffeine,
some form of variation thereof. Warm up, rehab, and mobility stuff to kind of make sure you can move efficiently. And then from there,
A lot of caffeine.
Most of the time you'll do squat, bench press, and deadlift in that order. You'll start with the bar and slowly work up to your working sets, whether that's straight sets across the board or doing a top set and then performing back off sets after. And then just basically rinse and repeating that for all of your main movements. And then typically there'll be some form of accessory movements after. So biceps, triceps, quads, hamstrings, basically smaller muscle groups to focus on building size or maintaining strength.
So are sumo deadlifts cheating? Absolutely not.
No.
A resounding no.
Fuck no. Sumo deadlifts are not cheating.
The sumo deadlift is a deadlift variation where your hands are placed inside of your legs, and typically the legs are placed a bit wider, in contrast to what's called the conventional deadlift, where your feet and legs are placed within your hands and your hands are placed outside and your legs are going to be a little bit narrower. The argument is that sumo deadlifting is cheating because it reduces the range of motion for lifters, allowing you to lift a greater load and or giving yourself an advantage in that way. And that's just simply not true. There are plenty of lifters out there, and anyone that has been in the sport for a while or has ever coached or ever competed knows this, but some lifters are not advantaged by going into a sumo position.
I think there's a lot of misconceptions out there, particularly from people that don't either lift at all or don't really understand the nuances and the differences between a sumo deadlift and a conventional deadlift. Each of them, yes, they require you to be strong, but in very different areas. So that could mean something very different from one athlete to another. You could have someone who's, say, very strong in a conventional deadlift, try to pull their same 1 rep max in a sumo, and it might not even come off the floor. So I think it is very individual. I think anyone who says a sumo deadlift is cheating, they don't really understand the sport.
I'll say it this way. If your federation, your union or association you lift in allows sumo deadlifts, then it is not cheating.
A scientific perspective where it's typically defined as the maximal force you can output through a given constraint, whether that be the squat, bench, or the deadlift.
In terms of the field of nutrition, so I have a PhD in human nutrition, which is mainly research-based, but I've also taught full university courses specifically around macronutrients and metabolism, so how our body functions in terms of breaking down food and using that energy, but also where that energy comes from and how it impacts things like our body composition and athletic performance. So in particular, something relevant to powerlifting athletes or anyone that wants to improve their performance in a strength sport. In terms of the role nutrition plays in powerlifting, there's the short-term benefits of improving your performance. So making sure that you have enough energy to be as strong as possible and generate force, but also recover from that training in terms of being able to do it again and prepare for competition. And that's something that happens over the course of days and weeks. But there's also that long-term component, which is months and years, and actually improving your body composition or the way that your body is built up. The amount of muscle that you carry, the amount of body fat that you carry, which is particularly important for a strength sport that has weight classes, because you want to maximize the amount of muscle you carry in your weight class, which typically means carrying the most amount of muscle that you can while being as lean as possible. And there's some trade-offs there. And that's something that happens over longer periods of time. And nutrition has a huge influence on that process. And then at the same time, flexibility within your food choices and not getting so wrapped up in eating a certain way is also important, because food in itself supplies such a wide variety of nutrients that can be helpful. And sometimes when we get so stuck in a way of eating, it can kind of limit that. Any specific macronutrient ratios or dietary approaches that would be beneficial? For the most part, a moderate to high protein intake, so prioritizing some of your calories with higher levels of protein, will definitely be helpful. Since it is a strength sport and we are looking to put on muscle, we're going to require some more amino acids and additional amino acids to recover and put on muscle. As that progresses through time, if anyone's just new to resistance training, you can make a certain level of gains at the beginning that slows down, as depressing as it is. It also means that you don't require as much protein when you're starting to reach some of your top end potential. That doesn't mean that there's not ways to improve your body composition, or you're not going to get stronger because there's such a strong nervous system component. So for beginners, lots of protein, adequate calories. Near the end, more calories to support more training, but the protein might not be as important. There's a variety of different evidence around supplements. Some things have come a long way. Some of the most widely studied would be caffeine, creatine, and supplemental protein. Those within, the context in which they're studied, giving you enough protein to hit a daily protein total, caffeine allowing you to have more energy and kind of blunt the fatigue response can be super helpful. Yeah, so back in 2017, I finished a book called Way of the Weigh-In, which is one of the first books and manuals written on 2-hour weight class sports. Some of the common strategies for weight manipulation in the past are water manipulation, since your body's made up of so much water and is heavy. Either increasing or limiting the amount of water you're consuming heading into a competition can manipulate your body in the short term. As well as some of the newest stuff coming out is the food that we can actually be quite heavy. So if you can change the amount of total food you're consuming for more calories and less weight, think about things like nut butter and trail mix, tons of calories, not a lot of weight. You could come into a competition in the short term weighing less while still having quite a bit of energy to make a weight class. So there's a bunch of changes in manipulation around that in the short term. As well as in the long term, you're always looking to carry as much muscle mass as possible. When strategy and experience and coaching is all similar, the more muscular athlete that can generate more force tends to be the more successful one. So we want to think about that in the long term.
So what is Bridge City Barbell? Well, Bridge City Barbell is a powerlifting club based out of Saskatoon. It all started right here in the Shred Shed, where we're currently recording, way back in 2018 when I first started my powerlifting career in the sport. First and foremost, it became a community where we would get together on weekdays and weekends and push each other to be better and to continuously grow. I would later join Bridge City Barbell as a coach, and that's currently what I am doing to this day.
Essentially have a culture built around strength through community.
Originally came from, I would say, like grassroots. A couple of my friends wanted to get more involved in the sport of powerlifting, which I was competing in, and I decided to kind of take them under my wing and take them into their first couple competitions where they all did extremely well. So from there, it kind of just grew and grew and grew to the point now where we have won multiple provincial championships.
Currently, Bridge City Barbell athletes are prepping for Western Canadians.
Western Canadian Championships.
The Western Canadian Championship.
The Western Canadian Powerlifting Championships.
Western Canadian Championships. They are in 6 weeks, and it's basically going to be the biggest Westerns ever held. Everyone's basically turned this meet into makeshift nationals.
It's a regional event, so athletes have to qualify for this event. You can't just sign up and go. So a lot of our athletes qualified for this meet at our provincial championships late last year.
It will be my first kind of more serious competition. There's a little bit more at stake.
So the level of competition is going to be quite high there, which makes it very exciting.
They're held in Moose Jaw this year, so that is fantastic for us. It means we're going to have more athletes be able to participate. We're going to be able to have more family and friends and spectators cheering on our athletes. Generally speaking, at this point, athletes are starting to get very specific in their training. They're going to be dropping volume, increasing intensity, meaning weight, and getting into heavy specific squat, deadlifts, and of course the bench.
Essentially from this point on, everything gets more intense as we get closer and closer to Westerns.
I guarantee you they are crushing their training right now. Everybody is very motivated for this meet.
So my long-term goals for powerlifting would be, I would love to make the national team and compete at the IPF World Championships. Being that powerlifting in Canada is very competitive, it's going to take a lot of work, but I've been involved in this sport for a long time. I think I have what it takes to get there. It's just going to take work and dedication to do that. So regarding my next upcoming competition, I would love to see podium, but it's going to be a big ask because there's a lot of big dogs going, so we just got to show up and do our best.
My short-term goals at this point, basically meaning Westerns in 6 weeks, are to podium and hopefully hit a 400 kilo total. I would love to take the provincial 63 kilo total record, as well as possibly take a shot at the national deadlift record. Essentially, I want to pull 450 for my deadlift. That's my stronger of the 3 lifts. In a more long-term sense, I would love to see either a national or an international competition in 2024.
Long-term, my goals in powerlifting is to podium at nationals eventually. The 93 class is an absolutely stacked class in Canada, but eventual goal, I want to be podiuming and making it onto national teams. Short term, my main goal is to get my national qualifying total at Westerns. Should be fairly reasonable to do because the goal for this year is to go to nationals, which are in PEI, which would be absolutely amazing.
In terms of some goals I have for powerlifting in my career, well, I think in the short term, I'd like to go and compete at Westerns. Truthfully, while I'm in physio school, it's very difficult to make substantial amounts of progress just because my environmental stress is quite high. So if I could at the very least just maintain my strength and, come out of physio school with some remnant of that, I'd be quite happy. In terms of long-term goals, I'd like to return to the national platform at some point in time. As to when that's going to be, likely in 2025. In terms of strict numbers, I would love to finally get up to a 600-pound squat, maybe a 365-pound bench press, and then I would love to get up to maybe around just under or around a 700-pound deadlift. Those are some probably lifelong goals that I'd like to hit eventually.
Training year-round for a meet is scary. First and foremost, you don't know what's going to happen 6 months from now. You have to just take it one session at a time, one day at a time. You just have to take what's there.
It can be really difficult to not know where you're going to end up, especially if you are competitive and you have a certain expectation for yourself. I think it forces you to really focus on the process rather than the end result.
It is critical to really help athletes understand they are not defined by the outcome of their last lift. They definitely do not get their value from how much they lift or where they placed in the last meet. Really the value from the sport comes from the journey to get there, the journey to compete. It may go well, it may go bad. You never know what happens on that day, but that day does not define you as a person, and it definitely does not define your worth. Powerlifting or any other sport. I've had athletes and, kids who've been in that scenario.
So really, it's just having faith that everything is going to work out.
You try and put yourself in a position where you're going to perform well, and you try to manage fatigue to the best of your abilities, and that includes managing nutrition and stress and all these other environmental factors so that you can bring your best self forward. And people want to represent themselves very well on the platform, and I know that's something that I hold very near and dear to my heart, and it's very depressing when that doesn't happen or you feel like you haven't represented yourself. Unfortunately, there are a lot of variables we can't fully control when it comes to competing, but I think one of the most fun aspects of the sport is getting out there in the community and giving it your best shot. Unfortunately, it can't always go our way, but that's just kind of the way life goes in general. And so in that way, powerlifting is actually a pretty good metaphor for life.
Pulling up to the gym and just being able to kind of relax finally through the day. The gym for me is a happy place.
That's it. That's all.